Hey, what's good, self-direct investors? I hope you're all doing great, and I want to welcome you back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Jordan. I'm the mind behind Make More Capital, and today we're coming at you with a midweek update in the world of cannabis. Now, before we jump in, if you enjoy this video or you learn something, please just leave a like on it, as it really helps out my channel. And of course, if you want to learn how to take advantage of this generational investment opportunity, subscribe below so that you don't miss any future videos, and then there's plenty of content for you to go back, rewatch, and educate yourself with. I've tried to put all the news and facts in one place so that you can watch episodes over time to learn about the evolution of the industry, identify top companies that you keep seeing pop up, and take advantage whenever you feel ready if you wish to do so. And we got some big news from Tom Engel reporting that apparently Rep. Ed Perlmutter says that the long-awaited introduction of Chuck Schumer's federal cannabis legalization bill that we got last week has been the final hurdle needed to clear a path to passing his cannabis banking legislation. So while this is still just talk, we do love to see a strong statement like this coming from Rep. Ed Perlmutter as he keeps fighting for Safe Banking Act and keeps us in the loop along the way. But do note that the wording here, as the long-awaited introduction of Schumer's CAOA is the final hurdle, apparently not necessarily the passing of the CAOA, which for most of us in the know understand that it will be dead on arrival because it cannot garner the votes. Therefore, this is the cover fire that will allow Schumer and his team to pivot to a sort of safe plus and possibly, allow what Schumer or what Perlmutter is saying here to become a reality in time. So nonetheless, very timely that we happen to get this statement during the same week that Senator Cory Booker is holding a Senate subcommittee on decriminalizing cannabis at the federal level. And while it's taken a long time, we do love to see Senator Cory Booker shift his sentiment a little bit and make it more in line with what the Dems actually ran on in 2020. So he tweets, "We are closer than ever to making progress on this issue and ensuring justice for Americans who have been victims of the war on drugs." So you can grab the link below if you wanted to watch this whole playback. I mean, it was somewhat interesting. I didn't watch the whole thing, but some good clips to take away from that. So just wanted to highlight the summary here from Brady Cobb as he highlights historic moment. "Thank you, Senator Booker, for finally giving cannabis reform its long overdue moment in the Senate. Weldon Angelos, you are a legend. Malik Burnett, thank you for your advocacy. And to the naysayers, including Dr. Bayerson, you will be on the wrong side of history," and I do agree with that. Onward. And so that is why we continue to fight and at least support these cannabis companies and this industry as they try to change the status quo for the better. And so with that, just wanted to share this clip from Stony Farms OG. But did Booker just come out as pro-safe banking? And while I hesitate to jump to any conclusions, especially based on all the lies that the Dems have spewed over the last year and a half, I think it would be wise for them to keep some of their campaign promises and finally act on some of what they said, especially because the longer they delay and keep the status quo alive, the small business owners and minority entrepreneurs that they claim to be fighting for, they get kicked out of the industry, allowing the MSOs to take up more market share and more opportunity and eventually just be bought out by big tobacco and big alcohol. And so we don't know what the plan will be in the long term, but it is nice to see the sentiment shift and actually see Booker, one of the main three stooges, starting to speak up and support safe banking. So
it's going to move forward. The states are moving. It's going to allow the people already to have resources, already have wealth and access to get the
status quo already.
People from lower income backgrounds with criminal
who need safe
marijuana convictions, what have you, to really get entirely squeezed out.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, the need for, legislation like the Safe Banking Act is clear, right? That need is there.
Thank you, Dr.
Insofar as we're going to do this in a manner that restores pays homage to and ensures that those who've been most harmed by the criminal prohibition of cannabis federally and, everywhere else in the country at the state and local level are able to participate, then we should do it comprehensively and thoughtfully.
So let me say in conclusion, thank you.
100%. So thank you, Dr. Burnett, and thank you for Cory Booker for making sense and realizing that the best thing for this industry and those that you got the votes for, the small business owners and minority entrepreneurs, is to pass Safe Banking Act so they can actually start in this industry. Thank you very much. And so on to this one from Marijuana Moment. Another top Democratic senator joins new cannabis legalization bill, but says banking reform must still pass ASAP. And so this is Assistant Democratic Leader Patty Murray and Senator Gary Peters, who have signed on to the Cannabis Administration Opportunity Act, raising the total number of senators on the bill to a measly 5. And so while this is definitely a nice headline, the main thing I want to highlight out of here is that Patty Murray is still adamant on passing safe banking first and foremost. As she adds, however, the statement also specifically addresses the bipartisan Secure and Fair Enforcement Safe Banking Act, which would protect financial institutions that work with state legal cannabis businesses from being penalized by federal regulators. It passed the House in 7 different times so far, but it's yet to advance in the Senate. And so while the reforms are pushing for are critical and long overdue, I remain fully committed to passing safe banking however possible, including as a standalone bill. Murray said, "It makes absolutely no sense that legal cannabis businesses are forced to operate entirely in cash cash, and my bill would bring them into the formal banking system where they belong. So thank you, Patty Murray, for again standing by your guns and advocating for safe banking while you do sign on to the Dead on Arrival CAOA. And so with that, just wanted to share this interesting one from MaryJane.com. Is apparently Congress just passed bill to allow cannabis ads on TV and radio. And so while this sounds like big news, keep in mind it's a bit misleading because it still has a lot of steps to pass through Congress. But if passed, this bill would block the FCC from denying broadcasting licenses to TV or radio stations that air cannabis ads in legal weed states. Hey, maybe I'd be able to finally monetize my YouTube channel after this passes. Who knows? But so main thing I just wanted to highlight is while this is fresh and fairly new news, just wanted to go down to here as this weekend, the House Appropriations Committee approved the funding bill with the cannabis advertising language intact. So it only actually passed through a House Appropriations Committee. So there's still several hurdles this provision must overcome before it can become law, though. The bill must still pass the full House and the full Senate, and although the House has approved several comprehensive cannabis reform amendments to date, the Senate has a long history of shutting them down. So just wanted to highlight this, that the headline is very misleading, that it still has a long ways to go, but this would be a very interesting bill to pass nonetheless to allow cannabis advertising on TV and radio. That would be groundbreaking, especially as a way to normalize cannabis. So grab the link below if you wanted to read more about that, but just happy to share that. And so as we move on to some other breaking news, Tom Engel shares that the House of Representatives just approved a bipartisan cannabis research bill, and the Senate is expected to pass it soon as well. So that's interesting because obviously everything that moves from the House cannabis related usually dies in the Senate. So potentially making it the first ever standalone cannabis reform bill to reach a president's desk. And so this is the one based on research alone. So obviously we would love to see this actually make progress through into the Senate. I just wanted to highlight that Nancy Mace tweeted yesterday that they were about to vote on HR 8454 Medical Cannabis and Cannabidiol Research Expansion Act. Let's go any minute now. In response to this powerful tweet from Normal, further putting prohibitionists in their places, they tweet, point of view, you claim cannabis has no medical use and needs to be researched and proven to be a liar. As if you go to pubmed.gov and you type in cannabis at the exact same time, you'll see over 29,000 results. And so prohibitionists can no longer make the claim that it has no medical value. If they try to, they're just going to be stuck on the wrong side of history. And so great news that this bill made it out of the House. Hopefully it can make it through the Senate, because as a research bill alone, it would just streamline more, research for the medical benefits as opposed to past research that, didn't really benefit anyone, as it looked for harms. Unfortunately, we didn't find any. So obviously this is a step in the right direction. While we would just love to see cannabis descheduled completely, we can't get everything that we want at once. An incremental step towards actually being able to research it is better than nothing. And so with that, on to this one from Joe Greisler. As U.S. cannabis sales are projected to surpass a whopping $57 billion by 2030 in currently legal states alone, according to New Frontier data, and should another 18 states legalize cannabis, that figure would climb to above $72 billion. And I think it is in the best interest of many states that have yet to reform their laws to legalize and launch an adult use program, because it provides jobs, tax revenue, and another lot of benefits to the citizens in your state. And so this one comes from an MSN.com article, how to get in touch with the big 5 cannabis operators in the U.S. And so I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but you can grab the link below if you wanted. Now onto some snippets from investment firms. So thank you, Todd Harrison, for sharing what Roth has to say on U.S. cannabis, but do keep in mind this is still just speculation, as these investment firms have a lot more information than we do. They still don't know what's going to play out, but this is their best guess. And so they share, we view the $65 billion illicit market as the largest opportunity in the U.S. to convert to the regulated market as more states approve cannabis. And by organically changing your laws, you're going to organically bring on new markets and help combat the illicit market. And so with that, weekly rehash, state legalization drives growth, federal CAOA news only. And so you can pause to read more about what Roth has to say on U.S. cannabis. While we jump over to this one from Dennis Rudev, weekly highlights by Echelon. And so whole lot to go here. You can pause to read, but Echelon U.S. Cannabis Regulatory Roundtable, Senate Democrats introduce CAOA legalization bill. U.S. Senate introduces federal legalization bill unlikely to win much needed Republican support. Highlights from Echelon's U.S. Cannabis Conference. Illinois announced the tentative recipients of 185 retail licenses via lottery. MariMed to operate expanded Maryland kitchen after recent consolidation, and Canopy Growth closed debt exchange transaction, helping retire $263 million of debt for primarily equity. And so this is a great summary of everything that happened last week if you did not catch my Sunday video. Otherwise, you can grab the link in the description below and check that one out. Otherwise, you can just pause to read. And so with that, a few more from Dennis Rudev as he shares updated cannabis comps as of last week based on revised estimates ahead of Q2 earnings. If you can believe it, we're already almost at Q2 earnings, as next week Green Thumb is going to kick it off on August 3rd, I believe. Then we're going to have Curaleaf and the other MSOs. But so keep in mind, this source is Echelon, and if it has the revised estimates ahead of Q2 earnings, seems like this is probably one of the most accurate comp sheets out there, as it comes from one of these investment firms that likely has more data than we do. And so just before we get into it, just going to highlight as well that TLRY is going to be releasing their earnings tomorrow, so we're going to be able to see how they've been progressing and whether they've been able to increase their market share, as Canada is slowly but surely growing as well. But also the New Jersey Cannabis Regulatory Commission is having their meeting tomorrow on Thursday as well, and so hopefully they will announce some new store openings, but at the same time be able to give us the data from New Jersey that we've been waiting for a long time to see. And so with that, this comp sheet does come from Echelon, highlights the large cap cannabis companies, large cap US companies, Canadian retailers, small and mid cap Canadian growers, and then small and mid cap US companies. And so a lot of data points across the board here, especially enterprise value divided by sales and enterprise value divided by EBITDA, looking at 2021 numbers, 2022, and 2023 across the board. And so this is another up-to-date one that you can grab as a resource for yourself if you want to keep and hold on to it. Well, lastly, Dennis Rudolph shares short coverings in US cannabis apparently, it's accelerating for a few names during the first 2 weeks of July. And so obviously, as we're near the end of July, probably takes some time to get this data. And so while I'm not going to pretend to know what all this sort of shorthand means, as he's a hedge fund manager and I have no idea necessarily what this is sort of describing, just wanted to share that it seems as if shorts are covering. And so obviously with shorts probably starting to cover, many factors, as one of them given the high borrow cost of cannabis stocks and positive signs of potential growth acceleration in pot stocks, much like New Jersey coming online, Connecticut and New York coming online hopefully by the end of the year. And then at the same time, the sentiment changing that we're seeing and the potential to actually have a legislative catalyst, including SAFE Plus, before November. And so with that, net change is for the 2 weeks period from June 30th to July 15th. But nonetheless, good to see shorts covering because we've been through enough pain already. It'd be great if shorts could cover and we could see the pendulum swing a little bit in our favor. And so with that, a few more. This one from Todd Harrison sharing Shooter McGinley previews US cannabis. So not going to go through the whole thing, but you can pause to read as second quarter 2022 preview and outlook, Green Thumb, Curaleaf, Ascend, TerraSend, and TrueLeaf. And so you can pause to read for more information down here. Well, last one, we move over to CGF on US cannabis MSOs. So thanks, Todd, for sharing this one. As the average MSO today trades at 7.2x 2022 enterprise value divided by EBITDA versus 2021 highs of over 15x. Given significant long-term top-line growth, relative valuations are very attractive, and CGF claims we'd be buyers at current levels on the fundamentals alone, even without near-term catalysts. So just going to share this clip if you wanted to pause to read, but that's what CGF has to say on US cannabis. And so on to some state news, as New Jersey's first legal weed store with a drive-through lane opens as 2 others get green lights from town. So love to see this progress out of New Jersey ahead of the meeting they're going to hold tomorrow, as New Jersey's 17th legal weed store began selling adult-use recreational cannabis on Tuesday, and its first one in the state to feature a drive-through option. And so this is the Apothecarium Lodi, backed by TerraSend, which is owned by TerraSend, open for patrons wanting adult-use weed at this location here, 200 New Jersey Route 17. The facility got its state approval on May 24th and features the latest operating hours in northern New Jersey with a drive-through, which is a cool feature. And so with that, though, meanwhile, 2 more New Jersey towns, Montclair and Neptune Township, gave the green light Monday night to begin offering adult-use weed sales. And so Montclair approved a resolution to allow for Ascend to begin adult weed sales in Verano under the Zenleaf banner, was given final approval by the Neptune Township Subcommittee. And so I believe that will give New Jersey either the 19th and 20th stores, because I believe an 18th one has been approved for Curaleaf, and that will open, from now until at some point in the future. And so with that, that could be stores 19 and 20, which is big news. I will update you as we move along, but great stuff out of New Jersey. Well, we've got some MSO news as Curaleaf launches Plant Precision, new product line targeting specific health and wellness categories. And so this is trying to fill customers' demand or consumer demand for low-dose THC formats that are geared towards everyday wellness, as 75% of Americans would consider using cannabis for health and wellness purposes. And so according to Curaleaf Harris poll that they conducted a while ago, survey, 69% of Americans say they would be more likely to use cannabis as a health solution if it came in small, controlled doses. And so Curaleaf's acting on this news. Curaleaf recognizes this need and created an approachable line for the newer wellness-oriented consumer, featuring gummy edibles offering lower customizable doses of THC and high doses of non-psychoactive therapeutic minor cannabinoids like CBD, CBG, CBN, and THCV, and the quickly absorbent THC topical gel. So very cool on Curaleaf to do that. So more information on some of the new products that they're launching for health and wellness down below here if you want to pause to read. And so with that, TerraSend to launch Cookies brand in New Jersey as well. So this one comes from New Cannabis Ventures, as New Jersey's first ever Cookies Corner opening tomorrow at the Apothecarium Maplewood. And so leading North American cannabis operator today announced with Cookies, a global recognized cannabis and lifestyle brand, is opening New Jersey's first ever Cookies Corner at the Apothecarium located in Maplewood. So it seems like the Apothecarium in Maplewood will have a Cookies Corner that will sell exclusively Cookies only products. Additional Cookies Corners are scheduled to launch in Lodi, the one that just got approved for a drive-through, and Phillipsburg in the near future as well. So good on TerraSend, especially for having this exclusive cookies product that no one else can get. So if you want cookies in New Jersey, you got to go through them. All 3 retail spaces will offer exclusive cookies products and accessories through an immersive branded shopping experience. So more information down here if you wanted to pause to read about that. We'll move on to this one as Air Wellness opens their 49th Florida dispensary, opening in Clearwater. So thanks, Todd, for sharing this. This is a new dispensary located centrally in Pinellas County, boasts 6,100 plus square foot of retail space. And so good news, I did want to highlight or at least share with you that I did put in an order yesterday for 250 shares of Air Wellness at $6.75 Canadian, and it did happen to trigger mid through. And so I'm very happy to have opened a small position in Air Wellness as well at these incredibly cheap prices. And so while I could have waited a bit longer in the day and got in at 660, I was just happy looking at the relative market cap to own shares at 675. I'm like, given the past and the future growth that they're going to see, I'd be silly not to be happy to just buy at these prices. And so I said it accepted, and now I'm in with a bit of Air Wellness as well. And so with that, some other state news is Marijuana Moment highlights Michigan awards $20 million in cannabis tax-funded grants to fund veterans-focused research. Clinical trials will explore the effects of cannabinoids on mental health treatments for veterans. So just happy to share that Michigan, seeing the benefits of ending prohibition, awarding $20 million for more research, especially for veterans who've needed it for the most for a very, very long time. So good on you, Michigan. Well, we got news from Tom Engel sharing that Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker announced that the state has generated $445.3 million in cannabis tax revenue in the fiscal year 2022 so far, a 50% increase from last year already. And so again, Illinois touting the benefits of ending prohibition, so much tax revenue already from a new legal industry that is helping provide jobs and a lot of other benefits to the citizens of Illinois. And so with that, just wanted to share is that below this list identifies the current holders of the newly approved 185 conditional adult use dispensing organization licenses in the BLS region in which that conditional licenses was issued. And so just if you wanted to go through the nitty gritty and see anyone that got approved for a conditional license of these extra 185, you can grab the link below as the Illinois Department of Financial and Professional Regulation has made this information quite easily accessible so that you can grab that if you are interested. And so with that, more news out of states as MJ Biz Daily does highlight that Colorado cannabis wholesale flower prices plummet to all-time lows. So keep in mind this isn't retail, but wholesale. This was to be expected as Colorado heads into, I believe it's 7th or 8th year. I think it's 8th year now. Yeah, 8th year of full adult use legalization. So unfortunately, this does happen as markets mature, but it's not necessarily a bad thing. While the wholesale price of cannabis flower in Colorado dropped to an all-time low, reflecting a market saturated with supply and squeezing cultivator margins. It's just going to require some innovation now as these companies that have a lot of wholesale flower figure out new ways to use this that could potentially help make them more money. As the price per pound was $709 as of July 1st, down 46% from $1,309 a year ago, and nearly 60% from $1,721 in January 2021, according to Colorado Department of Revenue. Well, that sounds like a scary drop and maybe cause for concern. Keep in mind, it's not the first time that this has happened. As previously, the low was $759 a pound in October of 2018, before jumping all the way back up to $1,721 a pound in January of 2021. So do you think we finally hit bottom, or do you think we're going to go back up to a new high? Because interestingly enough, what we find out is that adult use markets or adult use programs, much like new markets, much like industries trading on stock exchanges, they go through cycles, ebbs and flows. They go up, they down, highs, the lows, and the best thing we can do as investors is try to stay calm and respond to it in the best way possible, as opposed to reacting with our emotions in the moment. So just to add, the data is published quarterly, so there are fluctuations within a given quarter. It's also worth noting that this is reflected in the fact that cannabis sales in dollar amounts have declined for 12 months in a row in Colorado, mainly because we have not seen any stimulus checks or free money handed out, which allowed Colorado to see a record month. I think it was July of 2021, and since then they have not been able to get back up there, and that's okay. But do you think that we've hit bottom? Do you think we'll go back up over time? Obviously, as Colorado is the most mature market, we might not get back up to what we saw in January 2021, but I certainly don't think that the bottom is the end here, and I will think we get back up. But what do you think? Let me know in the comments. And so last few stories, unfortunately not all great news, is closure of Jay-Z affiliated Sacramento cannabis delivery service highlights competitive market in California, and just a promise that while Jay-Z might be affiliated with a company, that's not the reason to invest in the company just because Jay-Z is affiliated. So thanks, Todd, for sharing this. Besides Caliva, at least 4 more of the city's 58 cannabis delivery services have closed operations in the last several months. It's very sad, but it's a reality of the unfortunately bad policies that plagued the industry in California, which has allowed the illicit market to thrive for such a long time. And while fortunately there has been some positive developments out of California, like on July 1st, the removal of the cultivation tax, which will help growers who've been able to compete and stay alive for this long. Unfortunately, though, for many of the small business owners and minority entrepreneurs that wanted to get a start in this industry through other means, like cannabis delivery services, unfortunately, they're just getting the short end of the stick at this point. So last few stories in international news, thanks, Todd, for sharing this one. As the minister hopes firms get rich with medicinal products in Thailand, as Thailand has removed cannabis from their list of narcotics, therefore essentially descheduling it, and they're already seeing massive benefits. As Thai businesses cash in on cannabis, from milk tea to toothpaste, Thai cannabis industry could surpass $3 billion in 5 years, as consumers use toothpaste for gums, snacks to sleep. And so essentially this is how you pave the way for health and wellness using cannabis, especially CBD focused, before introducing THC in time. But good news out of Thailand. Well, apparently Zimbabwe gives nod to cannabis use in medicines for the first time. So thanks, Todd, for sharing this one, as the Southern African nation seeks to boost cannabis industry. And so again, this is still early. I will, update if the story does actually lead to them legalizing, but nonetheless, the Treasury estimates cannabis can generate $1.25 billion a year if they make that simple switch, the common sense switch that many nations would benefit from if they did it sooner than later. And so lastly, just wanted to share this one from Logic Prevails as we head out. And apparently poll results are in and people are bullish, or at least a lot more bullish than they were last month, as 65% of respondents expect the next 20% move in MSOS to be higher. What do you think? Let me know in the comments, but note that bulls have yet to earn a win over bears since the series began in February. So keep in mind, this is from a very concentrated group of retail investors like you and I that keep track of this stuff on Twitter, whereas the general population has no idea that any of these intricacies are taking place, and they really just believe headlines when they see that the Dems might legalize or decriminalize cannabis. And so if we get into the nitty gritty, this comes from 534 voters on Twitter that are keeping track. So keep in mind, it seems like the sentiment, at least for us retail investors, is changing and getting more positive. And I think the best thing we can do is just focus on the fundamentals, because they're stellar and they're only going to get better, especially as we get the earnings from next week. But with that, it is nice to highlight that at least from June to July, it seems like we have set a new higher low, moving up from $11.37 to $12.62. And so we just have to wait and see whether we can set a new higher low heading into August. And that could be a sign that the trend is changing. But again, this is still just speculation based on a poll of us concentrated retail investors that know this is happening, that have the common sense to realize that this is the best case scenario for the US, and that obviously by descheduling cannabis, it would solve a lot of domestic issues. But that is it for today's episode, folks. I want to thank you so much for tuning in. Really hope you got some value out of it. What did you think of the stories mentioned? Let me know in the comments if you have any questions or suggestions, and I'd be happy to address them. But besides that, if you enjoyed this video and you learned something, please just leave a like on it. Subscribe below if you don't want to miss any future videos, and I will catch you on Sunday for This Week in Cannabis News. Have a great week, everybody.